Welcome back to Pixorama, where today we're jumping for joy. Not literally though, I don't want to damage the camera, and I do advise caution if you also wish to jump for joy at home. Today we're going to bound into a character jumping animation, which can be quite tricky to do. But if you follow along, I think you'll find it's no great leap to accomplish. Oh my, the puns. Let's spring to it, shall we?
So here's the thing, my weird darlings. Let's see if I can keep this accent up for the whole time. A few years ago I was working on a wee game that featured a sprightly little lumberjack with a big bushy red beard, and he had a habit of jumping a lot. Which means, of course, that he needed a jumping animation. Which brings us neatly to Pixel Edit, our favourite pixeling animation studio program application.
Nailed it!
In which, right now, we are looking at a sprite sheet for this wonderful little lumberjack character. And all of our favourite animations are here, from an idle animation to a walking right, to a jumping animation, an axe swing, my personal favourite, and also an attack idle, which, you know, some might find quite novel. But today, of course, we are talking about the jumping animation. So let's dive in and take a closer look at how this was achieved. Now I am cheating slightly by starting off with a document that already contains sprites of this character, but I will assume that many projects actually do begin like this, so...
Don't cry foul, let's move on, shall we?
The first thing I'm going to do is create another layer, and I'm going to copy the arm from this character and paste it on that layer, so that I have control over the arm separately from the body. It just makes things a little easier to manage. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. And then, swapping back to the main body layer, you can see that I'm just going to make some tweaks to set this little sprite up for the first frame of this animation.
But Jimzip,
I hear you ask.
How do we know what the pose should look like?
I'm so glad you asked. As usual in this scenario, I would recommend grabbing that phone of yours and going outside, placing it on a little brick wall, and then carrying out the action for yourself. It really is the best way to get a feel for how the motion should look. And of course, then you can pick through the video you've just made and find the frames that most represent the motion you want to depict. So that's just what I did, and now I'm replicating those frames in our little sprite here, trying to make him match my dreams and desires as closely as possible. So yes, he's going to start with some bent legs and his arms crooked backwards, getting ready to build up some momentum to drive that jump into the air. And then of course he's going to leave the ground. Now I often recommend in these scenarios that you start everything with a wireframe, because making a wireframe before you commit to the final pixel render saves you a lot of time and effort. It can reveal where potential problems lie long before it becomes an issue. So yes, I do recommend working with wireframes, usually, but on this project I had my reference images and I was feeling quite bold, so off I went without them. Now you can see already that I've slid the first two frames forward once, and I've inserted a new initial frame, which is really a deep crouch for the character, really getting him ready to pounce. You may also have noticed that between the second and third frames, the character's arm moves quite dramatically. It goes from being down at his side to up in the air outstretched. This is a great little technique that works when you have a fast-moving object. It's really handy for emphasizing quick motions. So the quicker an object is moving, the more dramatic the difference will be between frames and its position in those frames. Maybe it sounds obvious, but the effect can be good if it's done right. And I guess we'll have to wait and see if I did it right here. Our character has reached the zenith of his arc in the air, and is now on the descendant again. So the last 4 frames in this animation will be him coming back down to the ground and landing. I decided early on that I wanted this animation to be an 8-frame animation, so that I had enough frames to express the motion clearly, and also so that I would get a very smooth result. Something that I believe is quite important when you are animating an action that is going to be very common in a game, because the player is going to see a lot of it. So it is definitely worth taking a little extra time and perhaps adding a few extra frames, because it will make a difference. You can see that I'm tweaking things as we go, And there are still 2 blank frames left, 2 final frames to cap off this little animation. So far it seems to be working out pretty well, although I can already see some problem spots which I will have to iron out. One thing that can trip animators, myself included, up when doing characters where limbs are flying every which way and passing in front of each other is keeping track of which one's which. And you can see that in this little sprite I have kept the legs differentiated by using a darker blue in one of them. This is helpful for me as an animator, but it's also helpful for the player as a cue to tell them where things are in space. Obviously the darker leg is going to be behind, because it's going to be catching the shadows, and the brighter leg is going to be in front. If you don't have the option of actually coloring the limbs differently in the final animation, you can at least do it while you're animating. Make one quite a bold color so that you can keep track of it while you're animating, and then just change it back afterwards. Quite a handy trick, and yes, it does keep those wayward limbs and or appendages in check. Our little lumberjack has made contact with the ground again. And at this point I have a small confession to make. It seems that I stopped recording a little prematurely and I am missing the final frame. However, we can easily remedy the situation by flipping forward in time magically, so that I can show you how the final animation actually looks and what that frame looks like. So here it is. It's basically just a slightly lower crouch, which completes our 8-frame sprite animation. And the sweetest moment of all is seeing how it looks in-game, and I think it looks rather schmick. Always a rewarding moment when it comes out nicely.
Well, what a hoppin' good time that was. I hope you found this video educational, maybe, or at least entertaining. If you did, smash that like button to show me some love, or subscribe to see more videos like this. I got a whole heap of gamey sprites coming your way in some future episodes. Until then, thank you so much for watching. I'm Jimzip. Bye!